Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Haydn Williams here. And if you're watching on YouTube, which I recommend you do anyway, you might note the first female guest on Man in the Mirror. And there is a reason for this, in that, being really honest, the last guest of the season, we've had to move it to the next season just because of scheduling reasons. And I was thinking, well, what can we do for the final episode? And I'd had this idea for a while of maybe sort of turning the tables and answering some of the questions myself, just really in terms of what are the products I like and what stuff have I picked up along the way. And I thought, well, I could do it as a kind of monologue, but it would be a monologue and it would be kind of boring. And also then I remembered that my wife, in our house, we have an ex-radio DJ. So I thought, well, actually, maybe the perfect person to turn the tables and ask me a few questions is my wife, Ali. So she's very kindly agreed to do this. We've had one technical muck-up already, but I think we're good to go. Ali, thank you for doing this.
As a pleasure. I feel honoured and privileged to be allowed into the man cave.
Yeah. The first female in the Man in the Mirror man cave. You're very welcome bringing your good female energy vibes to the pod. And I thought maybe it might be interesting as a kind of end of term bit of fun, you know? Like instead of bringing Battleships and Connect 4 or your favourite Wham cassette, we could do a kind of, table turning, ask me some stuff. So I'm going to shut up and hand over to my better half, as they say, Ali Williams.
This is dangerous.
I know, yeah. And it's a one-time only offer, by the way.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. I don't want to ruin the formula.
Thanks.
So, from listening to some of your podcasts...
Do you listen? You've never listened, have you?
I don't listen of my own back, in that I love your voice and I love listening to you. Obviously, I'm married to you, so I must get some joy out of conversation with you. But no, I do. I'm not a podcast person. That's the problem. It's not my medium.
Don't worry about it.
But let's just move on.
Let's move on.
So anyway, from dipping into the podcast, now and then when you're in the car and you're just having a listen back to it.
Forcing you to listen to it.
Force feeding it to me. I'm trying to sort of follow similar questions to ask you, because I thought it might be nice for your listeners to, as you said, for us to turn the tables on you. So
okay, do it.
I'm going to shoot. So listeners will perhaps know you from your fragrance writing and podcasting. Is this your full-time job?
It's not. No, I'm lucky to have a kind of parallel career, really. I'm a consultant in the music industry. I spent a long time working at record labels in marketing, first indie labels, then a long time at Sony Music, then a few years at Universal Music, then various independent labels and consultancies. But I'm at a stage now where I'm lucky enough to be in control of my own diary and schedule a bit more, and can work on individual projects or for certain clients or labels. So that's the mainstay, I suppose. What happened in lockdown, like lots of people in lockdown, I was reassessing things, and the music industry obviously drives on touring and connecting with people, and all that stuff stopped. So it meant I was on furlough for a while, and I was really keen. I'd spent a long time working with teams where you'd have social media teams and digital people and all that, and I had this slight feeling that I was a bit behind the curve, and I wanted to make sure I was better at building a website and using socials and all those things. And I didn't want to do that in music and do it in the world that I knew. I was keen to try it in another area, and I've always loved fragrance and grooming and things, and I thought it might be something I'd like to do a social channel about. So I started, it was really baby steps, and I started on Instagram and really, started following other people, finding out a bit more, buying some products, that kind of thing. And it grew from there. And I started writing for a few publications like Grazia Online, and met some brilliant people. So there wasn't really that intention at the beginning.
And you've always said that. You've always said that you really felt that as a sort of community that you've been sort of that people have embraced you.
No, they have. I've definitely found it to be a really welcoming community of people, both originally, of course, everyone was locked down in whenever it was 2020 or something. So it really was virtual, and I'd occasionally go on virtual launches or communicating with people that I'd met. So it was all, you didn't really know anyone in the.
Well, we got some really clever things through the post, didn't we? I always remember that sort of Italian meal. Do you remember that?
Well, because obviously brands couldn't do events in person, so they were often trying to find innovative ways of doing workshops from home. So occasionally there was this like Italian hamper that arrived with pasta that you were supposed to make, and then there was a fragrance that that kind of thing. Or
you were like a kid in a sweet shop, babe. You were so excited.
Yeah, so it started off obviously with those virtual relationships, but very quickly once lockdown ended, started to meet people IRL, as the kids say, and going to events, and just it turned. Actually, some of my really good friends in that world have come over the last few years, and it does seem a very welcoming and I think not particularly ego-driven bunch of people, particularly the writers and the people that I meet. I hear, I'm sure in other sectors it's worse, but people seem to be there for the right reason and have been very welcoming to me as, admittedly, a newcomer and someone that was passionate and interested, but certainly didn't have a background in journalism or anything. So it just come from my curiosity, and it's ended up that it's been a really lovely diversion and something that's become really important to me, albeit only over the last 4 years or so. But actually, I realised that it's something that is for me, and I think lots of people probably have.
You're a very sensory person, babe.
Yeah, no, I am, and I've come to realise that as well. Being sensorial and caring about smells and music and art and theatre. Yeah, there is, and I'm sure lots of people are, but I think it's really important to me, and I've found that in fragrance and skincare, and particularly in fragrance, there's this whole artistic side that has lots of commonalities with music and artistic people. So I've enjoyed.
You've got very definite taste as well. I mean, you've got a very broad taste, but you're like it with art, you're like it with photographs, you're like it with smells and food. You really know your own mind when it comes to your senses.
I think so. I'm definitely discovering new things and learning as I go. But I know I definitely have a clear sense of what I like. But it's been a real joy to sort of learn, and I'm still learning, because it's you fall down this rabbit hole.
Can I just interject and say that I think that how a chef on telly talks about cooking, which is almost in itself just a bit like, I can't smell it, I can't taste it, but I'm feeling it. And you sort of said, well, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a journalist, and I'm not, that sort of slight imposter syndrome. But I think the thing that you do really well is you're describing a smell, which really fundamentally you need to smell, don't you? But I think when you write about it, you're really good at the listener, the person who's reading your words, creating that smell in their head.
Oh, that's really kind. Thank you. But I think it doesn't come from, I'm trying to be aware that it's not necessarily about using loads of technical jargon or, raw material notes that people don't always find the easiest to, it's hard to know what some of those things smell like, let alone how you spell them and stuff. And the interesting part for me is to come at it like, how can
the provenance, the journey,
and how can people what's the easiest way for people to understand, what's the route in to understand what this smells like? And
I like those analogies with things that people do in their real life, like you said, analogies to how a smell can make you feel. It's more,
it can be anything. It could be how it makes you feel, what color it brings to mind, textures,
memories it sparks,
music, all of that, which is why it's such a rich thing and so enjoyable.
What is it about the smell with the senses? Isn't it the one that Isn't it more immediate than anything else?
Exactly, yeah. I think it's closest to the smell is the closest part to the part in your brain where it's about memory. So, so,
I love that.
It's probably the most sort of primal of our senses.
Primal.
So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Hence, it can protect us and look after it. It's all of that, isn't it?
So if you smell fire or danger or things like that. Yeah.
Can you tell, I know this is a question that you ask, and obviously I have a little insight because, I'm not allowed in the bathroom when you're doing your routines.
It's my private time.
I know. Do you know what? We kind of do have, we have a separate bathroom, but I wish we had separate sinks.
I know, that would be the dream.
That would make me really happy.
I know.
We need to do that.
And I've got quite a lot of stuff now.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, you go in the bathroom cabinet and it's difficult to tell who's who. Anyway, I wanted to ask you about your products, your heroes, your staples.
Yeah. Well, it's a big part of the podcast. I mean, again, some people have a kind of tight little edit or some people have a more extensive routine, but it's always been something that's important in the podcast and I felt was information that I wasn't always getting from other places. And I just think it's interesting to find out what other people use and any tips along the way. And I've certainly found it instructive over the last couple of years, hearing from the guests about, great recommendations or products that work for them with different skin types and hair types and all that. So, yeah, I'm lucky that, some stuff...
It's hit and miss, isn't it?
It is.
It is hit and miss.
It's hit and miss, but, I'm lucky that people send me some products so I get to try different things. But there's definitely some sort of staples in there that don't change a great deal. And
Give me your staples.
Okay, so staple-wise, we've had Miles actually from Murdoch London on the podcast before, who's the creative director there. But Murdoch London has some various products that I've been using for a long time and don't show any sign of shifting from my routine. So things like the Murdoch beard moisturizer, which is a really light cream to go on the beard, makes it smell nice, makes the hair soft, but also importantly makes the skin under the hair soft as well. It's just become
key. So stubble rash.
Yeah, and I think also, all of us beard wearers, there's always that slight paranoia that, oh God, is there, does it smell funky or is there food in there and things like that? They can. Hence why, once I've dried off after every shower, that's definitely...
You've got better at bearding.
Thank you. And that's definitely the moisturizer goes on. Hair-wise, Murdoch sea salt spray, and at the moment I'm using their hair cream, so just a bit of cream that goes on after the spray. So they're staples as part of the routine. Heath eye serum is something I use every morning and every night, and it's like a green pen, but it's got the metal ball roller that goes on under the eyes. And I still think actually my eye sockets, that's one of the areas I think I'm quite dark under my eyes. But it feels good. It feels like it's, like all good products, it feels like something's happening, but it's now just...
feel like medicine.
Yeah, it's quite it's quite a refreshing thing.
Soothing.
And the other staple is the La Roche-Posay Anthelios SPF 50, and I use the oil control one because I do tend to have slightly oilier, greasier skin. So the last thing I want to do with SPF as the final stage is then kind of add, loads of grease to my skin. So the oil control one is perfect and doesn't feel like, it doesn't add any, it keeps it quite mattified and doesn't add any
I think your oily skin helps you because it sort of somehow it really grabs the fragrance.
Yeah.
So I think you've got really good pheromones when they're matched with the right smell.
Yeah. Thank you.
You have longevity.
But I think, obviously different skin types have their own, pros and cons. The oiliness, I suppose, does give shine, which I don't love, but actually I suppose it's helpful in terms of, helping being less liney earlier because there's lots of oil in my skin. Oh, thank you. So, so there's some of the products I always use, and then there's some that come in and out. And at the moment, I've always been really keen on a nice scented body wash, and it's a really important part of my routine. I remember Laurent from Austin's also, I remember him talking about, that stage of getting ready and enjoying getting a
it's a
scented
reward, isn't it?
And it feels
do you know what I mean?
It's a moment of luxury, that kind of scented product. So at the moment I'm using a Horace Orange Blossom and Petitgrain body wash, and I must admit
I like that one.
Yeah, it is nice, and I can say it here, but sometimes I feel slightly annoyed if I've paid a bit more for a nice body wash, if you're kind of using you'll end up using half of it. It's like, well, I bought that, which is irrational, because it should be.
Goodness.
I know, it should be like
spread the love.
I know, and it should be, what's mine is yours. But anyway, so it's beautiful. The Horace, they now have a Covent Garden store. They've just opened a store in the UK. It's a French brand. Great skincare, grooming, hair care.
I love your Heath. I just really enjoy that one.
Yeah,
actually.
Heath again. It's a brand that I use a lot. Yeah, you certainly use their body washes.
It's a good every day.
Yeah, and I use
because the price point is really good as well.
It is. They're well priced, the Heath products. I use their face wash at the moment. It's a kind of lava face wash, which is really good, and yeah, the eye serum. So Heath is definitely a brand that factors. And then in terms
fragrance?
Well, no, there's still a bit more.
Sorry.
There's a few more stages. There's toner at the moment. I'm using Shake Up. Again, a brand that I featured on the podcast and do some great products. So there's a toner, just again to try and bring down some of the oiliness before moisturizing, which at the moment I'm using Patrick's AM1. And Patrick Kidd, if you've been a long time listener to the podcast, he was a guest a couple of seasons ago, the Australian entrepreneur and really charismatic guy. And his brand's doing great guns now, and is sold all over the world. And I think it just got more investment. There's another investment round. So it's at the premium end for sure. And I was lucky enough for him to give me a bottle of this AM1. So to replace it, I think it's going to be a pretty penny, but it's a really beautiful, very kind of luxuriant moisturizer, but again, feels like it's doing something. So yeah. And then just in terms of beard stuff, I've got a Braun beard trimmer. I'll use some Heath cream shave, and I've just got a Mach 3 blade just to tidy up. So I maybe beard trim once a week and then tidy up as necessary manually.
What is it about having a beard for a man? I sort of wonder that, because obviously your beard, you were kind of the pioneer of beards.
Oh, that was the first one to ever have one.
Yeah, ever. Well, no, but beards have become just a huge trend, haven't they? It's a big, beards, it's big business.
Yeah, I mean, all these things come and go. For me, I can only speak for me, and it feels part of my face now. And also, I think I look much more baby-faced without it, but also I think it kind of, as I've said many times before, it sort of hides a few sins, and I'd rather have a sort of bit more. Yeah, hides sins, hides chins. So, which still need work, but anyway, we can get into that. But yeah, I don't think I could imagine my face without it at the moment. Not to say there won't be a time when I'll try it out, but it's been there for 15 years, 20 years, something like that. So
2005.
So a long time.
19 years, babes.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, it's a lot of time. It's part of you.
Yeah.
So again, sort of thinking about your podcast and questions that you ask your guests. So I'm hoping that you're finding my questions interesting.
Yeah. Where
are you in your stage of life, and what do you think, Haydn, when you look in the mirror? What do you see?
I've just turned, last April I turned 50, so that feels like, it's an obvious milestone.
Just thinking about your cake and how old I made you look on the cake.
I know. Ali got me this cake, and it was a beautiful cake, and it featured Man in the Mirror and You Smell Great, my fragrance channel. But there was a picture of me that just made me look like Alan Sugar. And Alan Sugar's probably in his 70s, so I'm not sure that's the greatest.
He looks good, though.
Yeah, he does look well. But maybe
great. You're very Graham Norton.
Thanks.
You look like Graham Norton.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, so how do I feel? I think as I've got older, I've probably got... Well, there's two things going on. I think one, I genuinely feel less concerned about, what other people think. But conversely, the more I do this podcast and the more I get to learn, I guess I get a bit more aware of it. And I don't think I'd ever do, sort of injectables or treatments or things like that. But I'm aware of, as I mentioned before.
Not planning any surgery.
Not planning any surgery, but I feel like I'm conscious of my dark areas under my eyes, and then, a bit of double chin and the fact that my hair's receding, and that's,
Would you ever consider wearing makeup, like just under here? Like a touche clay, just for like a bit of highlighter.
Occasionally, there is a shake-up product actually.
We should try. Yeah, we should do that.
Which does put a bit of tint, which I have tried occasionally, and it's a really good one. And it's something I would actually, because I don't want to look. I think it's about. Fine. It's not even about the colour so much. I think it's that
opening your eye up, isn't it?
Yeah, and that implication that you look tired. I don't look tired.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Haydn. You said about receding hair, because I think that's a really interesting thing for men.
Yeah, and again, it's something that's come up in the podcast quite a lot. And hair, we had Carlos Huber from Arquiste on last episode, or a couple of episodes ago, sorry. And, he got to the stage where he just ended up going super short and buzzing it all off because he was conscious of it receding. I don't know. I feel like I'm not quite there in terms of ready to go super short, but I'm aware it's thinning at the sides.
You have got quite difficult hair.
Yeah, it's funny. But again, I'm not going to say, it concerns me greatly, and I'm certainly not in the market for hair plugs, or I don't even, it's not like I'm buying loads of hair thickening things, so it's kind of, I'm slightly resigned to at some point having to go a lot shorter, and I don't know how that'll look. But in terms of what I feel like when I look in the mirror, I
army cut, babe, crew cut.
Yeah, go like Action Man.
I definitely
think
nice. I
definitely think
Man.
If I did, if it does have to go a lot shorter, probably like a lot of people, I feel weight I know weight goes to my chins, and I feel a bit heavier here. But all of that said, overall, I don't.
Got to embrace it.
Yeah, and I genuinely don't, lose a great deal of sleep about it. And I think, again, from listening to other guests, I think, confidence comes in so many ways. But, I like to think that through, I don't know, I don't want to worry about it. And I think, good energies and good feelings come from, if you look like you're happy and content, that can sort of come out.
So do you not look in the, so no, it's interesting, because now I'm just thinking of it from a female point of view, and how, not that this is about me, it's about you, but just hearing you say that, and it feels really alien to me, as I think it does to a lot of females. And there are probably men out there as well, where you look in the mirror and, that sort of body dysmorphia thing, that thing about being in a hall of mirrors and seeing such a distorted view of yourself and slating yourself. And you've always been, you are a person, I've always, admired it in you, because you're not arrogant, but you're just sort of naturally quite happy in your own skin and confident. And that is a really attractive quality.
Oh, thanks. No, and it isn't, I hope it's not sort of, I don't come across complacent, but it isn't, certainly not, like, I don't rate myself. I don't feel like arrogant about it.
How do you rate yourself? Up 10?
No. But it isn't something that I worry about a great deal, and I feel happy in my skin, I think. And I think that's what I was trying to say. That feeling okay about yourself and giving off that sort of energy is a good thing. So
however, let me throw a curveball in. I know you're quite comfortable with your appearance, which I think from a female perspective, I always find that slightly weird, because me and my well, I think a lot of people have that slight body dysmorphia. It's like looking in a hall of mirrors, whereas you don't. You're sort of naturally quite happy and confident. However, if there was something that you could change, just one thing, what would it be?
That's a good question. Yeah, I hope it isn't. It's definitely not arrogance, because I know there's plenty wrong, but I generally am quite sort of happy in my skin. But I think if there was one thing, I'm quite hairy, and this has come up before in the podcast, again, with me and with other guests. But I'm naturally hairy. I'm quite hairy on my chest and my back and here. And it's one of the reasons why I don't want to, is why I have a beard. I don't if I was to shave every day, it grows so quickly, and it's quite thick.
You get
hair.
The shadow.
Yeah, and it's quite thick hair. So I suppose, all that kind of hair stuff, that would be one thing I'd like. Maybe, again, I don't care that much, but if you had a magic wand and said one thing you'd change, I would probably be less hairy. But I do, on that note, I think it's an interesting one, because it does feel like the one area where still, maybe it's not the one area, but it's certainly an area where it still seems okay. I'll look at certain websites or women's magazines or things online, it still seems okay to kind of criticize men for being hairy. And obviously we're in an era at the moment where
we're big on manscaping.
Well, manscaping, and just in general, like, no one has hair anymore, do they?
I know.
Whether we blame
I find it quite weird,
the porn industry or whatever it is, but everything's hairless. And as a hairy man, I've got a choice to make there where I either need to, be trimming or waxing or whatever all the time, or just get a bit more comfortable with it. And right back to the early days in our relationship 20 years ago, I remember first going out with you and thinking, I'm just really paranoid about being hairy and having a hairy back, and then going somewhere and getting waxed. And it being so painful, and it made so many welts.
It made it look so much worse.
Honestly, it made it worse. And so it was a kind of lesson to me. I mean, I'm sure that it might work well for some people, but
also you getting growing hairs.
Yeah, it was completely, for me, it was completely the wrong thing to do, because it made it really angry, and they grew out in growing hairs and stuff. So it didn't make it look any better. So now, I would either use kind of trimmers kind of thing, or leave it.
It just doesn't offend. I really like hairy men.
Thank God.
It just, thank God.
But yeah, that would be one thing I think I would probably, but again, you have to get comfortable with who you are, don't you?
And I think I've said it before a number of times, but your hair almost lends to hanging on to fragrance. And I think, which brings me to ask you, what's your fragrance that you're wearing today?
Today I'm wearing, I think it's pronounced Vireo, Magnetic 70. It's from Lynn Harris. Yeah, I'm, lucky enough to have in this room here actually lots of fragrances. So it's not like there's just one fragrance that I wear every day.
Did you have a fragrance though that was kind of your gateway to scent heaven?
Yeah, I did. Again, a long time ago, and it came up in the Murdoch podcast, but the Murdoch Black Tea was a fragrance that just got me interested in different kind of fragrances beyond, designer names or whatever. And actually, it wasn't because Murdoch was some cool name. It smelled really great. And I think
it was the first time I'd ever smelled tea.
Yeah.
Well, no, there was, apart from Elizabeth Arden green tea, which was kind of like a bit of, which has its place. But then I remember smelling black tea and just thinking that just smells of sexy man.
Yeah, I still love it.
Love it.
It's still one that's in my collection, and it still does incredibly well for Murdoch. Now, that got me interested in exploring more about, niche fragrances or just fragrance. And so now, I'm lucky to have quite a lot. I don't want to be one of these people that collects it for the sake of it though, and has massive cabinets full. I mean, you see a lot of that on TikTok and Instagram, and it's kind of not my jam, really. I like to have plenty of choice, and I'm just very lucky that I get sent a fair bit, but sometimes I'll want to sort of share the love and let other people have some and try it, because, space for a start, but I'm certainly not, I don't want to be some kind of weird...
Oh, I do very well.
I don't want to be some kind of weird fragrance hoarder. But yeah, so Murdoch Black Tea was a kind of gateway, if you will. And then, today it's Magnetic 70 from Vireo, which is a really grounding, soothing fragrance that's got incense, black pepper, cedar and vetiver from Lynn Harris is the perfumer who does her own line at Perfumer H and was one of the original founders of Miller Harris. So I love what she does. And it's a good one.
We've got a love of tea, babe, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think I love tea and fragrances.
Yeah, there was the the BB Parfum. Again, Jan Wilhelm was the guest recently. Ghost of Tom is beautiful, as is Dear Polly from Wilhelm, his previous company, and Miller Harris, Tea Tonique. Yeah, tea's a good note, isn't it? That we both.
It is a good smell.
Because it's not, we don't always, we don't agree on every fragrance. We certainly don't share them all, but it is nice when we've got this collection that's gender free and that we can.
And it's nice smelling it on each other and smelling new layers. Because what you bring out in it, I think you did that with, I think Dear Polly, and you just randomly wore it one day. And I love Dear Polly.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Wilhelm. And I just couldn't believe sort of the different, or maybe I've gone nose blind to it. So it was just really interesting, because that's why you pick a fragrance, because you love the smell, but then you kind of can't smell it anymore, can you?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
get too used to it.
Yeah. And just to sort of round things up, because I know you do this question, I wanted to get it in. And also I just think it's interesting, because I think I know what makes you happy, but what really makes you happy?
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question I've
no pressure
tended to ask the guests, and I probably have similar answers to a lot of people, in that there's definitely those table stakes of family, and we have a son, Charlie, who's 15, and you obviously make me very happy. And I think I've got my male circle of friends is small, a few good friends from a long time ago, and then lots of acquaintances. I think you've got a much wider circle of friends, but the friends I've got,
I just put a bit more work in, babe.
Yeah, you probably do. You probably do, in fairness. But actually, the mates I've got, getting together and going to a gig and having some food, things like that, I really value that. But then I think another thing that's brought me joy is connecting with people. And I realise, like, I think a few years ago, if you'd have said, go to an event and you might not know anybody, I wouldn't have wanted to do that. And I thought, I've got the friends I need. But actually, I'm realising that I do enjoy that, and I do take pleasure and joy in making new connections and all the things.
You're curious, Haydn, and you ask questions.
Well, thanks.
So that's,
I am. I am. And I realise it's important to me, and I didn't think it was before. And it's not about, I must, stack up loads more friends, but I really value that thing of connection, and not just, me making new connections, but I really like the aspect of connecting people together and saying, you should talk to such a person, you'd get on well with them, or they might be able to help you. I think that's, again, as I get older, I think that there's a good karma in, not that it should be about doing something because it comes back at you, but I just think it's a good thing to do. And I don't want to gatekeep those kind of contacts and relationships. And
it's generous.
Well, because I know people have done it for me, and it's, I just think, it's a good thing to do. And I think, something we touched on earlier as well, something else that's brought me real joy is this idea of, trying new things later in life. And this whole writing and podcasting and getting involved in fragrance and skincare for me came when I was in lockdown. I was about 46, 47. So
I think you really needed a creative outlet.
Yeah, I think I didn't know that I did, but I think maybe I did. And in my other work, it's a lot about managing other creative people. And this, I suppose there's an ego element to this, and it's for me, but there's a real satisfaction in finishing an article or publishing a podcast.
You were lacking a bit of passion. You were just lacking a bit of passion then?
Maybe. I think, but anyone that's been in a certain industry for a long time, I think maybe that's a symptom of that. So it's definitely. Ignited new curiosities and passions and interests. So that's been, brought me a lot of joy trying new things. And actually, you said it the other day, I think choir, we both sing, and it's something I was really into when I was younger and did school productions and all of that, and always loved, singing in the car. But I'd sort of forgotten how much I liked it. And
what is your Guys and Dolls, babe? Nathan Detroit, yeah. One of your big.
But a friend of ours set up this choir locally where we are, and we both go along once a week. And it's, it's a real
You love it. You were really skeptical.
I was skeptical. Of course
skeptical.
I was. And, you know, it's never one of those things that I try and dodge. I love it. And it's a real highlight in the week. And just because actually the act of singing is cathartic and energizing and all those things. So that's...
Well, it's lovely when you sing harmonies and they all come together.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you remember when we first met, babe, and we used to sing harmonies together?
Yeah. Well, we did on one of our first trips when we went to New York. We did karaoke but not in the sense of doing it in a bar in front of lots of people. We actually,
just for ourselves.
We went to one of those sort of Japanese style karaoke studios to do it ourselves. So
It's so self-indulgent.
I know. So singing is another thing that brings me joy.
Oh, well, Ali, again, very sensitive.
Thank you so much for turning the tables and allowing me my ego moment and my moment in the sun to do this. So thank you. And
well, thank you for allowing Phil
the first female guest. And I really appreciate it.
For trusting me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Well, I will turn off and I'll say goodbye and see you, but you're in the next room. So we'll see you in a second.
Yeah. See you downstairs for a cup of tea.
Right. Thanks for doing it, Al.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
And if you want me on again, I will be more expensive.
Just stay there for a second and I'll say, look, thanks for listening. And this is the end of season 6. And I'll see you next time on Man in the Mirror. Until then, take care.